Thanks, Bria. Happening now, capital murder charges added to the man accused of kidnapping Aniah Blanchard. The death penalty now on the table. Ibraheem Yazeed, now charged with killing the 19-year-old from Homewood. Blanchard disappeared late last month.
On a quiet night in October 2019, a 19-year-old college student made a stop she had made many times before. It was not late, it was not dangerous. And there was nothing about that moment that suggested her life was about to change forever. Her name was Aniah Blanchard. She had plans, she had people waiting for her, and she fully expected to be home soon, but she never arrived. By the next morning, her phone was silent. Messages went unanswered. Calls went straight to voicemail. For those who knew Aniah, this was not normal, not even close. What started as concern quickly turned into fear. As hours passed, questions began to pile up. Where did she go after that stop? Who was the last person to see her? And why did everything suddenly go quiet? Soon, police were involved. Searches began. Volunteers stepped in. The case spread beyond Auburn, Alabama, and into homes across the country. Then came a discovery that changed everything.
Investigators say she died after being shot. Her body found last week in rural Macon County after an extensive search from both investigators and the community.
Aniah's car was found, and what investigators saw inside made it clear that this was no longer a simple missing person case. Whatever had happened to her was serious, and time was no longer on her side. As the investigation moved forward, one name began to surface again and again: Ibraheem Yazeed, a man most people had never heard of, a man who, at the time, was already facing serious charges, a man who should not have been free, yet he was. What followed would expose deep cracks in the justice system, raise painful questions about accountability, and lead to a law named after Aniah herself. Nearly 6 years later, the case is still not over. A trial date is now set. A courtroom is waiting. And a family that has lived with unanswered questions for years is once again preparing to face the man accused of taking their daughter's life. Tonight, we are going to walk through who Aniah Blanchard really was, what happened during her final hours, and how a chain of decisions led to a tragedy that many believe could have been prevented. But to understand how this story ends, you first need to understand how it began, on a night that seemed completely ordinary. If you want true crime stories told with facts, clarity, and respect for the victims, subscribe now, because this is a story you won't want to miss to the end. Before her name became part of news headlines and court documents, Aniah Haley Blanchard was a daughter, a stepdaughter, a student, and a young woman building her future one day at a time. She was born into a loving family that placed strong value on faith, education, and staying connected. From a young age, Aniah was known as someone who cared deeply about the people around her. Friends and family often described her as thoughtful, gentle, and dependable. If she said she would do something, she followed through. Aniah was especially close to her family. She kept in touch often, checked in regularly, and made sure the people she loved knew where she was and how she was doing. This habit would later become one of the first signs that something was terribly wrong. She was the stepdaughter of Walt Harris, a professional mixed martial arts fighter. But inside her home, fame did not define her life. She was raised like any other young woman, encouraged to focus on school, make smart choices, and work toward independence. At the time of her disappearance, she was a student at Auburn University, studying human development and family studies. She had a clear interest in helping others and wanted a career that allowed her to work with children and families. Those close to her said she talked often about her goals and took pride in moving forward on her own terms. Aniah was not reckless. She was careful. She planned ahead. She balanced school, work, and social life the way many college students do. She enjoyed spending time with friends, but she also knew when to head home and take care of responsibilities. She did not have children. She was not married. Her life was still opening up, full of choices and possibilities. People who knew her say she had a calm presence. She listened more than she spoke. She noticed details others missed. And she had a quiet strength that made people trust her. That trust extended to the world around her. Like many young adults, Aniah believed she could manage herself. She believed she could move through her day without fear. She believed that stopping at a store, driving her own car, and living independently were normal parts of growing up. There was no reason for her to think otherwise. She had no known enemies, no history of dangerous behavior, no signs that she felt threatened. Everything about her life pointed forward, not toward danger. That is what makes what happened next so hard to understand. When Aniah stopped answering her phone, those closest to her knew something was off immediately. This was not a young woman who disappeared without a word. This was not someone who ignored calls or messages for long periods of time. Her silence was loud, and that silence pushed her family to act quickly, refusing to wait, refusing to assume she would simply show up later. Because they knew Aniah. They knew her habits. They knew her heart. And they knew that if she had the choice, she would have called. Understanding who Aniah was is essential to understanding why this case shook so many people. She was not a mystery. She was not living on the edge. She was a normal young woman doing exactly what millions of others do every day. And that is what makes her disappearance so terrifying. Because if it could happen to Aniah Blanchard, it could happen to anyone. Aniah was in the middle of building her future. As a student at Auburn University, she balanced her coursework, social life, and part-time jobs with care. College was exciting for her, but she also stayed focused on her goals. She wasn't just going through the motions. She wanted to make a difference in the world, especially in helping families and children. Like many young adults, Aniah valued her independence. She drove herself, ran errands, and managed her responsibilities. She made plans with friends, but always stayed connected with her family, checking in regularly. It was clear that she could handle her own life, and she did so with a sense of responsibility beyond her years. Despite being young, she showed maturity in the way she managed her time and choices. Friends remember her as someone dependable. If she promised to meet or help, she would. She cared about the people around her and made sure they felt supported, even while she handled her own busy life. Her life was ordinary in the best sense. She had routines, hopes, and plans. There was nothing about her day-to-day life that suggested danger. That ordinary sense of safety is what made the events of October 2019 so shocking. For someone like Aniah, the sudden silence and disappearance were completely out of place. Understanding her independence and daily routines helps to see just how sudden and alarming her disappearance was. A young woman, full of life, simply vanished while living the normal routines of college life, a reminder of how fragile safety can sometimes be. On October 23, 2019, Aniah's evening began like any other. She had errands to run, and she stopped at a local convenience store. A quick trip, nothing unusual. She got into her car afterward, expecting to return home shortly, but she never made it. By the next morning, her family noticed her silence. Calls went unanswered. Messages were ignored. For someone like Aniah, who always checked in, this was alarming. Her family's concern grew quickly. Authorities were contacted, and a search began immediately. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers joined the effort, hoping to find her safe. Flyers went up. Tips started coming in. The local community was on edge. Surveillance cameras at the store later showed a brief encounter between Aniah and Ibraheem Yazeed, a man who would soon become the center of this case. Footage revealed him entering and exiting her car, though what exactly happened during those moments remained unclear. So no one could know yet that this ordinary night would mark the beginning of a tragedy, A routine stop had become the turning point in Aniyah's life. Her disappearance shocked those who knew her. She was responsible, cautious, and aware of her surroundings. The sudden silence, the unanswered calls, it didn't fit the Aniah they knew. Something had gone terribly wrong. And that is when the investigation truly began. When Aniah didn't return home, her family's worry quickly turned into alarm. She was someone who always stayed in touch, and her sudden silence was unusual. Calls went unanswered, texts were ignored, and every hour that passed made the fear grow. Her loved ones acted fast. Police were contacted. Friends and neighbors began searching. Social media posts were shared. The local community rallied, hoping that someone would have information about her whereabouts. But despite the growing search, no clear answers came. Then came the chilling discovery. Aniyah's car was found, and inside, evidence showed that something serious had happened. It became clear that this was no longer just a missing person case. A life had been put in danger. Soon after, Ibraheem Yazeed became the focus of the investigation. He was a man already facing serious charges and was free on bail at the time. His connection to Aniah raised critical questions about the justice system and how such tragedies can occur. Aniyah's remains were later found, confirming the worst fears of her family and the community. Her story, though heartbreaking, led to meaningful change, including Aniyah's law. A new law designed to prevent dangerous suspects from being released on bail while awaiting trial. Her life, though cut tragically short, continues to inspire change and awareness. Aniah Blanchard was not just a name in a headline. She was a young woman with dreams, ambition, and a loving family. Her story reminds us of the importance of staying connected, acting quickly when something seems wrong, and pushing for justice when the system fails. If you were moved by Aniyah's story, take a moment to subscribe to this channel for more true crime cases told with care and respect. Share this video so more people can learn from her story, honor her memory, and help raise awareness about safety and accountability. Aniyah's life may have been taken too soon, but her story lives on, and it's one that deserves to be remembered.